This is Stacia, and I wanted to share a game that I played in the Parma Championships just this past Tuesday, actually, in October 2019. And I played against Konstantin Dimitrov, sort of an older player, longtime player. Used to be about almost 1800 and now is sitting at his floor of 1500. And unfortunately, I'm also sitting on my floor of 1500, but for secret reasons that maybe I'll share a different time. Not sandbagging. Okay, I'm not like that. No, it's more a long term sacrificing my rating to improve my weak parts of my game. But okay, enough about that. Let's have a look at this game. Okay, let's get started. E4 and E5, and I played F4. And this is the King's Gambit, a new favorite weapon of mine. D6 was played, and I played Knight F3. Okay, and here I think probably the best move is to take the pawn and play the Fischer defense. My opponent did do that, and I played D4, which I think is the right move. Let me make sure. Yeah, D4 is the main move. Bishop C4 is an option, although it scores better for black. Okay, so D4. And you know, this is sort of the point of the King's Gambit. When you play F4, you're attacking that pawn, asking him to step aside so you can get D4 in and establish the pawn duo. Okay, so we have that. And now, I thought he was going to go G5 here. And I think that's probably the best way to play because I really want to play bishop takes F4. If I can play that and develop my bishop in one move like that, I'm pretty happy usually. So G5 would stop that plan, and then I have to play H4, and my king's uncomfortable, you know? But he played A6, okay. And I don't know what A6 has to do with anything. This must be a bad move. So I took the pawn, like I said, that's what I wanted to play, and now Knight C6. So developing a piece, but I think A6 is just the loss of a tempo. I guess he wanted to stop bishop E5. So, okay, bishop C4 and queen E7. Okay, so now I feel he lost a tempo with A6, but he also lost a tempo with queen E7. This blocks the bishop. The bishop probably wants to come to E7 in this structure because this is an even slower plan. And I figured he was doing this because he wants to castle queenside maybe. So maybe that was his idea. Also, this does attack the pawn, but the problem with a move like that is now I can just develop my knight and it will defend the pawn. So I get a developing move in, a very natural move, and it defends that threat. So I don't like queen e7 at all. And now he played knight a5. Okay, so you can see at this point that I don't believe my opponent is recognizing the danger in this position where I have this really, I mean, he's allowed me to create this really nice development scheme, which is actually, you know, kind of what happens in the 10 golden moves. And now he's moving his knight again in the opening. I don't think that's the correct way to play. I think he should probably develop with knight f6. Or maybe even get his bishop out so he can castle queenside ASAP. Get his king safe. And now I made what I would consider my first mistake of the game. I was really tempted to play bishop g3. But I didn't want to move my bishop again either. But I kind of have to. It's under attack. And I played bishop b3. And I reasoned that, you know, if he takes, which he did, then I take with my a pawn, and it actually helped me further develop. And now if he castles queenside, I at least have this open A file. Okay, and of course, white's doing okay here, but bishop d3 is a better move. And the reason is that, we're kind of leaving this knight out to dry. This knight doesn't really have any squares. It has this square only, and we could play d5 at some point and then threaten b4. So I like that idea. Also, my bishop will be good on d3. This is a nice attacking square. I can play moves like e5 with more force, opening up the bishop. And yeah, so I'm disappointed that I played bishop b3, but of course this is okay. So let's continue in the game. Yeah, so I took, and now he played bishop g4. So I was certain he's going to castle queenside now. Now, one thing that I do well in positions like this is that I will scan for good moves, but I'll also continue my development. And here I castled, which I think is totally good. So just get my king safe. And now the only thing I have left to do is play something like queen d3, and my rooks will be connected. So my development will be completed, and black, has issues to solve still. Okay, and I want to talk about this move. Now, if you're a decent chess player, you're probably groaning when you see this move. And, well, there's a little story behind it. So my opponent actually, touched this pawn, and he acted like he was going to play b5. I think he may have even put it on the board, but I think he realized that I would take. And if takes, I can take his rook with check. So he realized this, and he put it back, and he thought for probably like a minute or so, and then he grabbed this pawn and played g6. And I was looking at that because I'm like, well, g6 isn't a good move either. But then I thought, it's touch move. This is a USCF rated game. I probably should call him out on it, and I did reluctantly. I don't like to really do that in general, but I was kind of like, hey, you touched your B pawn. He was like, oh, yeah. I guess he pretended like he wasn't trying to sneak something in. So he played this move. And I kind of felt guilty at this point because, this is not a move you want to play. I mean, it's probably a blunder. Certainly a mistake because black has a lot of issues. But now, now we can focus on the punishment part of the game. How does white best continue? Well, I first played queen d3, and this comes with a threat. So this is really nice because it breaks out of the pin. This pin is no longer here, and it comes with the threat. I'm not going to take with my queen though, but I'm threatening rook takes a6, winning a pawn and opening the a file. And he played queen d8. So I think recognizing that he needs to defend the rook and keep his king safe, although, again, he wants to play knight f6. This also frees up the square for the bishop, so I think that was part of his idea. Yeah, and now I went ahead and took the pawn. Now here he played bishop takes f3. And I'd like you to pause your video in this moment. And my question for you is, what would you rather play here? Do you think you would play a move that captures the bishop, or would you take the rook? So if you'd like to pause your video and determine what you would do, go ahead and do so now. Okay, and I don't know if you realize this, but it's actually kind of a trick question. So, obviously, queen takes f3 is a blunder because it would undefend the rook, and that would lose the game. Rook takes bishop is playable. I played rook takes a8 in the game because now if the bishop tries something silly, like in between move attacking my queen, I take his queen with check. And after he takes, now I take the bishop. So that's not playable. But the real best move in this position is neither option. It's the move queen b5 check. And I wanted to point this out because it's the same thing I did in the game. So when pieces are hanging, I think it's really tempting to feel like an urgency to recapture. And I thought I was being clever throwing in rook takes a8, which is sort of an in-between move, but queen b5 check would win on the spot. And yeah, and this is a check. So I learned the valuable lesson that, especially in positions like this, where white is basically winning, you still want to check all your checks and captures. So although I looked at my captures, I missed this check because there is no c6. If c6, I take with check, and I'm on the rook a second time, so that piece will be lost. So the only move is king e7. And now we have a follow-up check, knight d5 check. And even though, I lost this knight, black doesn't have time to do anything about it. He would have to bring his king up. Now there's a nice little winning move for white. And that's the move rook takes rook. And after the queen takes, we have this nice fork. So that would win the game. Yeah, king back here takes. And now the bishop can escape if it wants. Yeah, it can even take the pawn, but we just want a queen. So that's maybe okay. Yeah, and in fact, the computer says mate in 8 in this position. So pretty interesting, right? So the correct punishment in this position was to not be in a hurry. Yeah, not to be in a hurry in this position and still look for checks since queen b5 is so strong. Okay, but I took here. White's still doing well, of course. And now I took with the queen because my rook's not hanging. And, I do have pressure on f7, so that's kind of nice. He played knight f6 finally. And now I had to find, I wanted to find an accurate continuation. So here, my candidate moves were knight d5, e5, and bishop g5. And yeah, so what move would you play in this position? Yeah, so e5 is tempting, but I think after e5, the problem is black can throw in this queen trade. And I think here, maybe he just moves his knight away now. He could take first, I suppose. Yeah, and after takes, maybe just move the knight away, maybe to g4, maybe throw in this check. And I think black's situation has improved without the queens on the board. So e5 would be a clear mistake, I think. This move is interesting. But I think here, this is probably still good for white. But I think he could take here, and after we recapture with a pawn. Yeah, this is clearly good for white. Bishop e7, and I guess my rook's going to come here. But black is going to be able to castle. Okay, so that move is an option. I played bishop g5 in the game. I was trying to be a little sneaky because this knight is pinned to the f-pawn. I could take that with check. And I thought after bishop e7, maybe I could take, and play knight there because the bishop would be pinned. I think there he can castle, though. Also, when the knight comes to d5, I'm threatening this fork. So, okay, I played knight d5 here. Computer calls this the best move, but this is sort of complicated. So I think he can take my knight. And this is a discovery on my bishop. But I have the in-between move, queen takes f7 check. Now he should play, he has to go here or here. If king d7, I could take the knight now. Notice the queen's still defending here. That's kind of what's nice about that. And now we're threatening the bishop. Yeah, this is definitely an excellent continuation. So this is kind of what I reasoned in the game, that he couldn't really take the knight. But he played queen d8. Okay. And here, here I decided to take. There's other options. I can take the bishop. I can take with the knight. I could also play e5, I think. All these moves are good. But let's get into this position. Yeah, so he took with a pawn here. If he takes with a bishop, I'll take it, and he'll take, and I'll take, and he'll take, and I take and win a pawn in that endgame. I'm 2 pawns up, right? Because he's got 6 pawns right now, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, I have 7 pawns. So maybe that would even be a 3rd pawn. So he took this way right away. But I took anyway. Takes, 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 takes. And, you know, I have to admit that that punishment, you know, now I'm really imagining that queen b5 move earlier in the game compared to this position where it's just an ending. Although it should be good for me because he has 5 pawns and I have 7 pawns, so I'm 2 pawns up. He played king up, I played rook here. So tying the rook down to his pawn. But now he played rook a8. Yeah, and so, you know, compared to all those lines earlier where I was crushing, you know, he has counterplay now. He has counterplay. And I have to be careful not to lose too many pawns on the queen side. Or maybe he might have drawing chances for all I know. So I do want to show the rest of this quickly and then go back to what I could have done better. Okay. So I found the right plan here, which I wonder if the computer will agree. I thought it was kind of the only move. Yeah, computer says it is correct. So my idea was that I can't stop him from attacking my pawns, but I can activate my king and save my c pawn. So like king f2 is met by rook a2, but then maybe I just move my king up. And when he takes, I play king d3 defending the pawn. So that is in fact what happens. Yeah, and now here, rook b1. So he's going to cause trouble for me. He's going to check me. He's going to attack my e-pawn. I decided here that I had time to take that pawn. This creates a passed h-pawn. He checked me. I went here. Yeah, and c5, I like this move for him. I think I have to take that. Yeah, and then I play g4. This was an actual interesting moment in the game. Computer doesn't recommend my move, actually. But I did have a plan. I wanted to play g4, g5, and g6 with this pin intact, because I saw if he goes after my e-pawn, I could give that pawn up and play g6, and I thought that was winning for me. But computer gives h3, rook h5. Hmm, pretty interesting. Yeah, and even rook h4, and probably it's better to not sack this pawn and try to hold on to it. Because black wants to trade pawns, but white doesn't. Okay, but I played g4, and he did go for my pawn. So I pushed, he took, and now g6. And I felt pretty good here. He played rook f4. I don't believe that's a good move because now I can go into a winning king and pawn endgame. But even here I made a mistake. I took here. Better is rook takes, because that comes with check and forces the trade, so it's more forcing. But instead I played pawn takes. Now my opponent should keep the rooks on the board so that he has counterplay, but he did take, and now it's just an easy game. Yeah, he cannot stop my h-pawn. If he goes to stop my h-pawn, I'll eat his other pawns and win. So that's how the game ended. But let's go back to a critical moment. Yeah, I want to go back to this moment right here. Okay, so in this position, I had the option to go into that 2-pawn up ending, which is a very Stacia thing to do. It is. A lot of times when I have a huge advantage, I notice that I simplify into a lesser advantage. And I don't think that on my road to being an international master that I can afford to play that way. Okay, I've got to find the best moves. And the computer gives some really interesting moves here. But the general idea that the computer gives is that it wants to keep material on the board. And, it's not hard to see why. Black's kingside structure is awkward, so if they ever castle, the king might be in trouble. If they don't castle, they're not really coordinated very well. Even if the rook comes to the open file, it's undefended. This bishop can barely move. This pawn might be in trouble. So there's a lot going on here. And the computer recommends the move rook a1. And that is a cool move. Very cool move. So I didn't consider that move because I like the pressure I have here. And I can win this pawn. So rook a1 is very interesting. So I want to show a sample line of how to proceed in a position like this for myself more than you guys because I want to play this way. Okay. So I think, I would be afraid of black castling here. So we're going to castle. And the computer suggests rook a7. So very interesting, right? I love this idea. We are attacking this pawn. Notice this bishop cannot move at all. After castling, the only square for the bishop is now gone. So we're attacking this pawn. And if c6, we can actually just win the bishop straight out with check. So that's a pretty nice idea. So what can we even do here? We have a check on g4. Yeah, I think black's just in huge trouble. So computer doesn't even, let's see, what would I play here as black? I might be tempted to play king h8 and get the rook on the g file, but if king h8, we're just going to take this, right? Yeah. And wow. Computer suggesting queen takes c7. Not a good sign for black. Yeah, so I think I failed to realize just how bad black's position was. And went into that endgame that was honestly a little scary, in this part. After rook a8, I was a little nervous because I did not evaluate this before I went into it. I just knew that I was 2 pawns up. But yeah, I mean, had I lost more pawns, this might have been a much more difficult ending. And when you get into time pressure, anything can happen. And this is not a game that should have to end in a way like that and be risky like that. Okay, so let's review real quick. So yeah, if you play against the King's Gambit, don't play slow moves like a6 or h6, okay? White is going to seize the initiative. They're going to take this pawn back with tempo. And moving the knight again was wrong because of bishop d3. Yeah, and yeah, touch move enforced. And after this, white is winning, of course, but I still am not happy about missing this check. This check would have won on the spot and won very, very nicely and quickly. I do want to add, too, that winning quickly feels good, but it also can be important because in tournaments, you know, winning in this way would save me time, especially slow time control games like this. And that would allow me time to rest and maybe meditate or maybe take a walk and exercise, maybe grab a bite to eat to be more prepared for my next game. And that can be important. So not happy about missing that. Bishop g5 I like. Knight in I like. Inviting complications. But here, trading down. I would call this a mistake as well because white is way too coordinated and has too much pressure to trade down into this better endgame here. Yeah, and the counterplay is, luckily I had this plan to bring my king up. But yeah, I'm not so sure I should have went into this when I had more immediate wins. Yeah, and the last thing. So in a position like this where you can take with check and force the trade, that's the correct way to proceed. Instead I did this, which, you know, he could check me, he might still have counterplay, and in time pressure it might still be tricky. But here we go. And that game was won. So I hope you enjoyed this. I don't usually like to show games where my opponent, you know, breaks opening principles so badly, but I think it is important to look at how we punish when that occurs, and I hope you learned something with me. Thanks, and have a great day. Bye.